You mentioned, if I remember correctly, that you're married already 22, 23 years?
23 years, yes.
23 years. And when you talked about it, you light up, you talk about your wife. I think that's fantastic, especially nowadays we hear more and more, people get married and yeah, it doesn't last. It
Mm.
seems more, nowadays it seems more common than it, in my opinion, actually should be. Maybe since we have a little bit of time, can you share some of your secrets, so to say, on continuing your marriage and not just continuing it, but having that spark when you talk about it, that enthusiasm, that passion for being married with your wife for such a long time.
Well, I think I was very lucky in that I kind of met my wife Deborah, and obviously found her incredibly attractive, but also she was kind of like my best friend as well. So that was a real bonus. She was I hadn't met a lady like her in that she was into the same sort of physical challenges that I was, yet she looked feminine. It's kind of she was that for me perfect kind of tomboy who was really really pretty and feminine as well. And I she kind of fills my blanks as well. So in terms of my personality, you know, um, there's a little talking about personalities. This is an interesting one. Um, have you come across 16 personalities.com or something like that? It's like a slant on the Myers-Briggs personality test. I recommend everybody go have a go at that. Answer the questions really truthfully and honestly, and you'll kind of learn so much about yourself in terms of what your strengths and weaknesses are, um, how relationships will either fail or work for you, what sort of partners will work for you or not, and it's really interesting that. Just out of interest, I've done it for myself to kind of try and explore and find out more about myself. My wife Deborah did it as well. Um, the things that I kind of excel at, she's weaker at, and the bits I'm weaker at, she excels at, and it's kind of that between the two of us, we make a good one. And the fact that she also understands that physical drive I've got and that competitive side with myself, not necessarily other people. It's always been about testing how far I can go, and she's got that as well. Um, Early days, she was doing like aerobics classes while I was doing martial arts training, and she's kind of doing her kicks and things in from her class, saying, "Oh, we did this one this week," and I'd be like, "Well, we do the same thing, but this is a technique that we could defend ourselves with," and she's like, "Oh yeah, right." And I kind of dared her to come along and do a kickboxing class at the time. And she was like, right, dare me, do you? It's kind of one of those. So she came along and did it, and she was hooked. All of a sudden, she was doing the same sort of movement she was used to, but there was this outcome to it. And all of a sudden, she was driven by that. And I think we kind of share that. And I think as well as kind of filling each other's gaps like that, we also kind of understand each other's drives in that way. We've got the same sort of passions, and having children together, we both kind of wanted children if we could have them. Actually, initially we had big problems with having children. We'd been married for a long time, and we were being very careful. We wanted to have kids when we were ready to have kids and not have any accidents, make sure we had the home ready, that we had the spare room and everything was prepared. And you never feel like you're going to be ready for kids. But then when we did try, Deborah actually had it's called a molar pregnancy. So it's where instead of having a fetus, you end up with a tumor. So Deborah had to go through chemotherapy and all this kind of stuff to kind of get through this. So she had the sort of D&C surgery as well first, but there was still some of these tumor cells left. She had to have chemotherapy and go through all of that. And it's kind of like I think it was 1 in 1,500 chance of that happening. But on our first attempt at having a child, that happened. And after that, it was kind of like 2 years before we could really try again. And she's constantly monitored even now to make sure that this condition doesn't reoccur. But there was a bigger risk of us having kids and actually having another tumor rather than a child. And we both decided, we wanted to have kids. We kind of felt that was part of what we wanted to do together. and we did try again, and successfully had two really healthy kids, you know, afterwards. So, you know, that all worked out really, really well. But that first kind of experience really kind of cemented us both as a couple as well. It was a big testing time, you know, and, you know, especially for my wife, seeing other mums walking around with children, even shouting and screaming at kids and stuff that, you know, you get that sense with parents that sometimes don't want children, and kind of, and you're kind of looking and going, oh, I really want to have kids, you know, I really want to sort of be able to share that sort of development you've got and that love with your partner. And for me personally, it was like, I was fascinated to see what genetics were going to happen, because my wife's so different to me as well. She's kind of got Italian in her side of the family, so she tans really well, and I'm like a Celtic. I'm Scots and Irish. I burn in the sun, and it was, you know, there's all this kind of what were our children going to be like, and our attitudes were quite different as well. My wife's quite sort of feisty and fiery, and I'm kind of calm and collected, and it's interesting to see what comes out in your children and in the environment that you've got at home. And we've kind of, it's really interesting, we've got one of each in our children as well. I've got my son, who's actually more like my wife, and my daughter, her attitude's more like me. So we've kind of transposed into each other, but now we've got a male and female version, so it's fascinating. And I think kind of having the relationship that's willing to explore all of that, accept that nobody's perfect, that we've all got strengths and weaknesses. I think that's really what cemented our relationship, and that nothing's going to run smoothly. We don't expect it to be a straight path. Nothing ever is. There's ups and downs, and that actually together you can sort it all out. But mainly kind of communicating to achieve that.
Great. Thanks for sharing that.